So as the title might suggest, this is a little video just about a comparison between the GoPros and Insta360. I'm doing it really because I happened to mention in one of our videos that I'm moving over pretty much to Insta360 now from GoPro, and people were interested in why that was. And actually one of the big reasons for it in the beginning was that they seem to be getting more and more glitchy, these GoPros. Now, I mean, I've used GoPros right from the start, from the GoPro 1, and they've got much better in things like their stabilization, all sorts of great features. But they've also got more glitchy. I mean, with these ones, I've got a 5 here, a 7, a 9. I haven't got the latest one because by that time I'd moved over to Insta. But even the latest one here, I mean, this one, quite often you'll start it, it'll stop itself 3 seconds later. It just stops for no apparent reason. The back screen's a bit glitchy. These ones, you have to take the batteries in and out quite often to reset them. They come up with errors on the card, all that sort of thing. Just ended up, couldn't trust them, and it's just slightly annoying.
I won't go over this too much as we've covered some of the details on 360 cameras in an earlier video.
And that's because they are recording everything all around them.
We talked a bit about the workflow in that video too, so have a look at that one first if you haven't already. So the reason for moving over was partly dissatisfaction with GoPro and partly because Insta360 are now producing cameras as good and in some ways better than the GoPro, I think. They've increased their range of cameras to include some direct competitors to GoPro, with some non-360 cameras, and people are also tuning into the fact that 360 cameras aren't just for cool effects, but can be used in a versatile way to give you normal linear type footage.
The air is cool but still, and the mountains all around provide perfect protection.
So just a camera on a stick and you can pick up the shot you want later. And of course, action footage. After all, these are supposed to be action cams. But shots like these are actually really hard to get with a standard action cam, as it's difficult to get the framing right when you're involved in the action yourself. The 360 camera lets you worry about that later. And Insta360 also have the best flow state stabilization. But perhaps the biggest 360 camera trick, the invisible selfie stick, which means you can film yourself. As long as you can ski holding a long pole. You can see I struggled a bit. And of course, horizon lock, so viewers shouldn't end up feeling seasick after watching a sequence. So over the last year or two, I've been finding the Instas more and more useful.
So as well as the X2, I now have this, the X3, which as you can see has got a much bigger screen on it. So it is easier to do some of the fiddling around with it. It's easier to see what you're doing. But most of what you use this camera for, you're not going to be actually looking at to see, because certainly if you use it in 360 mode, you're recording everything anyway. And the thing with this is you've got that flexibility. You could just put it on the end of a stick and get a shot like this one, which is just us walking along. And I've got the stick basically up in the air over my shoulder, moving it forwards, moving it around. You don't see the stick. It looks like there's a sort of drone moving around you.
Taking a breath, like taking yourself to the hospital. And I feel okay, almost the same, but I know I'm not healed.
I should say with that video, I'm using one of Insta's selfie sticks. They make great selfie sticks. I only ever use their ones now because there's no this twist business. They're just really nice. They just pull straight out. They're just well made. They always have the right sort of friction on them. And they're light and they stay straight. So I've got this one, which is the really long 3-meter version, and that's what I did that shot on, because you can get the camera a long way away from you, and that's the trick. And you want it to be able to be good enough that it's not going to bend. This one doesn't bend. I had one beforehand, but it was a bit bendy, and then as soon as it starts to bend, you lose that lovely invisible selfie stick because it's not a straight line back to you. So yeah, this one, really recommend it, the 3-meter one that they do, and I've used that in all sorts of situations. It's really, really good. But you will notice with that shot particularly, I'm not using the sound from it because I've got this camera out. Obviously I can't be putting a wind piece of sponge around it like you would with a GoPro to try and deaden that sort of wind noise sound. So the microphones are going to pick up any sort of wind noise that's there. So how do you get around that? Because I've got this shot here. So this was shot in the kayak, and you can see we've got good sound from it.
So legend has it that this prison was occupied by people who couldn't swim. They used to just put non-swimmers there. That's the story we heard. And they only had one guard because none of them could escape, until the day came when they killed the guard, knocked down the big wooden door and used it as a raft to escape. And it hasn't been used since.
Wouldn't you just tell a fib and say, yeah, I can't swim, but in fact you could?
Maybe they thought it was a trick question, I don't know.
So that wasn't recorded separately, that sound. It was recorded in camera using one of these. This is a mic adapter. It just plugs in the side there, very neat. It's quite cheap to buy, so they're great. And I use the Rode radio mics. I've showed these in the last video that we had on sound, so have a look at that if you're interested.
This is how the receiver clips onto the X3 using the Ulanzi mount and the sound adapter. It's supposed to fit completely into the stitch line, and 90% of the time it does and is completely invisible. But every now and again you do get a ghostly glimpse if the wire's not quite in the right place. In fact, it was there in the clip I just showed you. Did you spot it? The sound quality is good though, and it makes a really versatile rig.
Once you've taken this door off though, because you have to do that to plug it in, this won't be waterproof. With it in, it's supposed to be waterproof down to 30 meters, but to be honest, all these sorts of cameras, no matter what it is, GoPros, Instas, if I'm properly diving with them, I'll put them in a case because they're not infallible for things like that. And actually, with this camera anyway, to get the stitch line to work, you need the proper mounting. So there's an air gap all the way around it. If you just put it underwater, it won't stitch anymore because the refraction of the water just messes it all up. So you need one of these if you're going to go underwater, and then you can get fantastic 360 underwater shots as well.
So far we've been talking about 360 cameras, and while it's possible to use a 360 camera in a single lens mode, so it just acts like a normal action cam, shooting that sort of footage would probably be best done with an Insta360 RS. This is something different from Insta because it's not just a 360 camera, it's a modular camera which makes it very versatile. It splits into 3 sections, which means the viewing screen can be turned around to face forward or backward. In this setup I'm using the really nice standard lens. It produces 4K footage and its sensors slightly bigger than the latest GoPros. I think the stabilisation's better too. But it doesn't stop there, as you get a 360 lens that can be used as well. So you just swap out the lenses. There's even a 1-inch chip version available. If you just want one camera that does it all, this is the one to get.
And for me, this camera needs to be a really good all-rounder because I need to get good sound from it as well. I like to sort of do walkie-talkie type stuff with this camera, and for that, I either want to have a little top mic on it, or to have, like I've got now, the radio mic, and so that needs to go through the little adapter. And that was the major disappointment for me when I first got this camera. The adapter wasn't working. Now, I don't know if it was a duff adapter. I did buy a new one because actually I lost the old one, but in the meantime the camera actually needed a firmware update as well, so it might have been that. But this one is now working, so you've got this really neat little system now. I mean, I've got the radio receiver on, and it's almost perfect. It's not quite perfect because it doesn't work with the dual mono system that you have from these radio mics. I covered that in the sound piece that I did in the last Camera 101. These Go 2 receivers are really good because you can have 2 mics. I've got one on at the moment, but if you wanted 2 people, you could have it 2, and it puts one as a mono track on each track. Well, this doesn't work. It's for some reason not compatible. The second mic won't work, but with one mic, I mean, I'm getting the sound from it now. You know, it's really, really good. You get perfect sound from it, and it's properly neat little system, so I really like that. I can even, at the moment you'll see I've got an extra lead in the bottom of it here because this is really nicely got another plug in the bottom, so I can power the camera from that as well, because I'm using the power stick here, so obviously I can start and stop it from that as well, because I haven't got a lot of extra batteries. I haven't got any extra batteries actually at the moment for this, and I don't actually need them because it lasts quite a long time, and with this stick it'll last all day, so it's quite a good way of using it really. So yeah, I'm going to get a lot of use out of this, I think, this year. It's going to be a really neat little system. But just before we go, I want to look at one more thing, last but not least, the Insta360 GO 2. I don't know why they call it 360, because this one isn't a 360 camera, but it is a really useful, tiny little camera. I didn't think it would be when I first got it. I thought, well, I'm not really going to get a lot of uses out of this, but in fact, it's brilliant because it's so tiny. You can put it anywhere. So I could get shots like this as an action cam. This is when we were skiing. It's got good stabilization, gives you good pictures. So to do that, I was using one of the mounts. It comes with a whole load of different, really useful mounts actually. This one was the one I was using for that, so I just clipped onto the peak of my cap, and you could also put it on the strap of a backpack as well, which I did at one stage. But the thing that is really useful is the fact that it is magnetic. It just flips in, so when you've got gloves on and stuff, when you're skiing, there's no bother with you know, little screws and things to get things mounted. You can just move it from one place to another and put it in the next magnetic mounting. So you know, it's quite versatile in that way. I think they thought a lot about it. You could also just obviously stick it to a little bit of metal somewhere, and you can start and stop it either from the camera itself. It's got haptic feedback, so when you press it, it just buzzes at you to tell you that it's started, or you can use the charging case, because when it sits in here it charges as well, as a remote to start and stop it, and this will buzz at you as well in your pocket. So you know, they've just thought about the design, I think, really well, and with some of their other mounts as well. This mount here is one of my favorites. This is what they call the sticky mount, but it's not sticky, but it can go to anything flat glass it's best on. So a shot like this here, when we were traveling, I could just put it on the inside of the windscreen. And actually, while we were going along, I exported for Insta in 9x16, then later on I can export it 16x9. Really good quality, really good stabilization. So yeah, really impressed with that. But actually I want to show you one last thing. This is probably my favorite of all the mounts, because it's quite clever. This is just a little lanyard that you put around your neck and put it inside your shirt, and then it will just stick to you, and it's, you know, it's pretty good. You wouldn't want to do anything too vigorous with it, but just walking around, you can just have it stuck like that, and you don't have to have a big harness on. Very easy to do, quite discreet. So yeah, for little bits of filming, I think this camera's going to be really, really good. So quite a good range there. I hope that it's given you some sort of insight to the different things that are available now from Insta, and give some of them a try. I think I'd probably be able to get a discount code, which I'll put into the description, so have a look at that. And yeah, happy filming. I'll see you on the next one.